Hello, and welcome to the Riff Arcade spin-off show, Let's Play-Doh. I'm your host, Butts, and on this show, I'll break down your favorite games to show you their social, historical, and philosophical themes. Now, I don't have a degree in any of those fields, but I hope you will be inspired to engage with these topics and games for yourself. This is a fan-made project, so any opinions that sneak through are mine and mine alone. So please, sit back, enjoy the episode, and be ready, because spoilers are incoming. Today, the galaxy is at peace, with Nintendo's 1994 masterpiece, Super Metroid. Like, do I even need to say anything about this game, you guys? It's Super Metroid. You guys know Super Metroid. You play as Samus Aran, unbelievably cool bounty hunter, female icon, and the scourge of this D-bag right here. A 2D side-scroller with platforming, Super Metroid helped launch an entire genre of game, Metroidvania. It's right there in the name. It's so good that it's still the standard by which those games are judged. It's my favorite game of all time. The Metroid series has always been a bit of an oddball for Nintendo. Their other series seem to be kind of proving grounds for game mechanics. The Mario series is all about platforming and later exploring 3D spaces. Star Fox is their flight simulator. Mario Kart is the racing series. Each property of Nintendo tries to perfect some new idea and showcase it. But Metroid isn't really a thesis about anything. It's not trying to innovate in any particular gameplay mechanic. It's more of just a shift in tone. It's darker, more mature, and more serious than Mario's bright colors and goofy story. The series creator, Yoshio Sakamoto, has said that the horror movie Alien was a huge influence on the series. Probably why the Metroid series has some teeth to it. And it's because of that more mature tone that Metroid can harbor some more interesting elements. One of the hallmarks of the series is the isolation Samus feels on her missions. In Metroid 2, Samus wipes out an entire alien species on their home planet. The space pirates are constantly hopping from planet to planet to extract resources and exploit wildlife. More mature tone means more mature themes. The Metroid series, and even other Metroidvanias, include an idea from one of the most infamous philosophers of all time. So let's dive into a core mechanic of the Metroid games and find out why this feels so satisfying. Fredrick Wilhelm Nietzsche, I know, but we had to get to him at some point. Just stick with me, I promise it's worth it. Was born in Röcken, Germany in 1844. It was called Prussia at the time, but with all the Russias and Prussias and Ushas running around, we're just going to stick to Germany just to make things easy. His father was a pastor, but died when Nietzsche was only 4. The family moved to Naumburg, and because he was fatherless, he was granted a scholarship to the prestigious Profta Academy. I mean, sorry about your dad? Here, have some homework? It was specifically because his dad died that he got in, because his grades were poor. But he began to catch up rapidly, and he was soon ranked 3rd in his class. He also began to dabble in music composition and poetry, although he probably shouldn't have. Composer Hans von Bülow called one of his pieces the most undelightful and the most anti-musical draft I have faced in a long time. Not just bad, anti-musical. Although, from what we'll learn about Nietzsche, that completely scans. In 1864, he enrolled at the University of Bonn to become a minister like his father. But he lost his faith and changed majors to philology after the first semester. In 1867, he volunteered for the Prussian military, but a riding accident ended his military career, and it was the first of many major health problems. In 1868, he met Richard Wagner. That guy, whose work Nietzsche admired. Their friendship started out great, but eventually soured. Spoiler alert, every relationship with Nietzsche eventually sours. In 1869, he was appointed a professor of classic philology at the University of Basel, becoming one of the youngest to ever hold a professorship. He renounced his citizenship to Germany because he could? In 1878, he published Human, All Too Human, the first work that features his signature style of small, little, pithy observations and critiques. He then published The Gay Science, nope, no joke here, and in 1882, he traveled Europe with two friends to find better weather for his health and to establish an educational commune. But the friendship, and they never saw each other again. At this point in his life, Nietzsche was living in near isolation and had a falling out with his mother and sister. He turned to his work and wrote some of his most famous books during this time. He cranked out the first part of Thus Spoke Zarathustra in 10 days. By 1886, he was writing a book per year and traveling even more to alleviate his health. He wrote Beyond Good and Evil in 1886, The Genealogy of Morals in 1887, The Antichrist in 1888, and Ecce Homo, although the latter was published posthumously. In 1889, he suffered a complete mental breakdown. Legend has it he watched a horse get whipped, ran across the street, threw his arms around the animal, and wept. There's no indication that he liked horses before this happened, but I think we all know where this would eventually lead. His sister Elizabeth moved back to Europe to take care of the now completely mute Nietzsche. He had a stroke in 1899 that left him paralyzed, and he was increasingly suffering from dementia. He claimed that he was crucified by a German doctor and that he was in the process of abolishing all anti-Semites. Nietzsche died from a combination of another stroke and pneumonia in August 1900. After his death, Elizabeth became the executor of his works. She collected his unpublished works and his personal notes, tweaked them a little bit, and published The Will to Power. The Nazis would find it, love it, and because of the tweaks made by a very anti-Semitic sister, hold it up as a German philosophy justifying their regime. To be fair, Nietzsche's work was changed after his death to fit his sister's worldview. But, then again, if your work only needs a few tweaks to be loved by the Nazis, well, that's on you. Hitler himself attended Elizabeth's funeral in 1935. This is one reason why Nietzsche has an infamous reputation, but only about 70% of it is deserved. Sure, he was a jerk of a person, but as a philosopher, he was also a jerk. Nietzsche isn't really concerned with a systematic approach or logical arguments. He wants people to read between his lines, but then he'll scribble all over the paper. He doesn't even care about committing philosophy's cardinal sin, self-contradiction. He's not self-consistent to the point of even questioning why consistency should be important in the first place. Nietzsche is the kid who sat in the back of the class and would just argue with everything the teacher said just for the sake of arguing. Remember that sick burn from Hans von Bülow? Nietzsche didn't just write bad music, it was anti-musical. Nietzsche is forever the contrarian. I oppose you because you need opposing. But, in a way, he's also performing the job of a classic philosopher, challenging unexamined beliefs and clarifying ideas. Socrates, the patron saint of philosophy, described himself as a gadfly, someone who stirs up arguments and makes people question their held assumptions. Nietzsche does this constantly, he's just a tool about it. But even with all his infamy and contrarianism, Nietzsche does bring up some good points and interesting ideas. A broken, sourpuss jerk of a clock is still right every once in a while. So, I'm no Nietzsche scholar. There are men and women who spend their entire careers studying this guy. But I do know one thing, is that they all agree that his writings are up to interpretation. Cool. I can't get this one wrong. They also agree that one of the main ideas in Nietzsche's writing is a concept called the will to power, der Wille zur Macht. All the Xenosaga fans just perked up. Nietzsche doesn't really flesh out his ideas, so we're gonna have to jump around his works to understand it. Do you want a name for this world? A solution for all its riddles? A light for you, too, you best concealed, strongest, most intrepid, most midnightly men? This world is the will to power, and nothing besides. And you yourselves are also this will to power, and nothing besides. Nietzsche sounds amazing if you're a goofy 19-year-old and have never really thought about this stuff before. He developed the will to power after reading Arthur Schopenhauer. My God, what is going on with the facial hair in Germany? Schopenhauer wrote a generation before Nietzsche and was one of the only thinkers a young Nietzsche respected. Only a young Nietzsche thought that, though, because when he got older, Schopenhauer tried to explain the underlying behavior of every creature by saying their actions were always aimed at survival. Humans expend a tremendous amount of energy to craft their environment and to make it more habitable. We build dams, tame forests, tame animals, spend years teaching our children how to survive. A bear will hike for miles just to find a secure source of food and water. Schopenhauer called this the will to life, an underlying drive that secretly motivates all behavior. This appealed to Nietzsche, but he found that it didn't explain everything. Why do people do things like climb mountains or skydive? Why would a bear leave a steady source of food and water to find a better source? There's no survival value in risking your life like that. Nietzsche said that survival alone doesn't explain it, so he went a step further. All behavior can be explained with a will to power. Psychologists should bethink themselves before putting down the instinct of self-preservation as the cardinal instinct of an organic being. A living thing seeks above all to discharge its strength. Life itself is will to power. Self-preservation is only one of the indirect and most frequent results thereof. In short, here, as everything else, let us beware of superfluous teleological principles, one of which is the instinct of self-preservation. We owe it to Spinoza's inconsistency. The will to power can best be thought of as an overcoming obstacles to become your true self. It's mastery over yourself and your environment. See, for thousands of years, philosophers have noted that we can't control our external reality. So the best we can do is to control our internal reality. Stoicism, Buddhism, Epicureanism, lots of schools of thought have advocated this. But Nietzsche, ever the contrarian, asks why? Why not try to control as much as you can? You won't be able to, but what's wrong with trying? Why not take risks and live dangerously to try to improve yourself and your surroundings? How does one become stronger? By deciding slowly and by holding firmly to the decision once it is made. Everything else follows itself. Nietzsche advises us to work tirelessly to exert your will to overcome your circumstances.
Dov Walan Farel, we were made to dominate. The will to power is in our blood. You feel it in yourself, do you not?
Nietzsche isn't talking about physical power, but, he's not talking about physical power. Nietzsche would look at a billionaire buying up competition and demanding laws be changed to make their business more profitable, and a good old country boy who just needs my truck and my beer and my gun as equally powerful and accomplished. Both have overcome things within and without themselves to change their environment to suit them. Will to power is about overcoming obstacles that stand in the way of being your authentic self. What is good? All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. What is bad? All that proceeds from weakness. What is happiness? The feeling that power increases, that a resistance is overcome. But what happens when my will to power clashes with yours? And Nietzsche would say, good, may the best person win. The person who has the stronger will, the person who can impose their will over the other person, that's who is ultimately right. To those human beings who are of any concern to me, I wish suffering, desolation, sickness, ill treatment, indignities. I wish that they should not remain unfamiliar with profound self-contempt, the torture of self-mistrust, the wretchedness of the vanquished. I have no pity for them, because I wish them the one thing that can prove today whether one is worth anything or not. That one endures. You think maybe this is why no one likes you, eh, Nietzsche? Alright, so how does this relate to Super Metroid? Well, one of the key components of the Metroid series, and Metroidvanias in general, is meeting an obstacle and finding something later to overcome it. You lose all your powers, and you spend the rest of the game gaining them back. Red door? Missiles. Can't fit through a gap? Morph ball. Blocks in the way? Bombs. Gap? Grapple beam. Story and game progression in Super Metroid is literally about presenting you with obstacles and Samus powering herself up to overcome them. Sure would be nice if this bridge were gone. Boom! Power bombs. And that satisfaction you feel when you get an item that lets you open up that dead end, that's the will to power. Now, with that power-up, you'll never be blocked like that again. You've overcome that obstacle. You took a risk, got an item, and part of the reward is the delight in feeling yourself become stronger. And it feels good. It's a different feeling than landing a jump in Mario, or solving a puzzle in Zelda. See, a lot of games have ways of conveying player progression. The term for when and where a player can go at any point in a game is called gating.
Time, just ow, ow.
Ooh, oh my gosh, look at that energy go.
Yeah. I need the various suit. So this is the game's way of saying, don't go this way, stupid.
And it doesn't always refer to just the map, or the actual gates. Maybe a mini-boss you barely beat in the first levels is a regular think-nothing-of-it enemy later on. Or take Breath of the Wild. You need to stop a few times to climb up a map tower early in the game, but late game, you don't ever have to stop. We've all seen those freaks who beat games like Dark Souls with bare hands, so technically all the weapons and armor are optional. But in Super Metroid, you have to get items, or you can't even progress the game at all. You cannot beat Super Metroid without them. Player progress and gating are standards in video games, but in the Metroid series, they are foundational. Super Metroid is unique in gaming because it's not combat that conveys to the player that they have grown stronger, it's traversal through the environment. Old areas open up and can double in size when you revisit them later with more power-ups. Super Metroid even gives you a way to overcome the problem of finding items to overcome problems. The X-ray visor. Sometimes the next item is behind a boss, so you get the double satisfaction of becoming physically stronger and killing an adversary. An adversary who is also trying to exercise their will to power over you. A big, dumb, ugly, jerk, douchey tool. Ah! Human beings do not seek pleasure and avoid displeasure. What human beings want, whatever the smallest organism wants, is an increase of power. Driven by that, they will seek resistance. They need something that opposes it. Displeasure, as an obstacle to their will to power, is therefore a normal fact. Human beings do not avoid it. They are rather in continual need of it. Taking a slight detour, the main antagonist of Metroid Dread would absolutely love Nietzsche. Well, for a little while. Ravenbeak is a Chozo warrior who wants to use the Metroids to extend his power.
Chozo manfaragai atasen maboris ashkar behek ninu barash nek ili ferun tar hadar les ninu kedar ili mathroid mugi tanam tar bi hadar bunta eiris dosh eka ili gimel.
His tassel even has the inscription Hadar Sin Olmen, which is Chozo for power is everything. The whole plot of Metroid Dread is Ravenbeak wants to awaken the Metroid DNA that was put into Samus during Metroid Fusion. To do that, he needs to challenge her, to push her to the limit, and, surprise surprise, overcome those challenges. It's her will to power, in this case to stop him, versus his will to power of conquering. Going back to Super Metroid, the space pirates want to use the Metroids to... Actually, I forgot why they want to use the Metroids. Oh look! Oh, future me is looking it up. How nice! Well, there you go, bioweapons. Thanks, future me. No problem, past me. Just happy to be in the episode. Say, how can I communicate through time this way? This is pretty neat. Well, this is the Nietzsche episode. Time is a flat circle. Ugh, Okay, calm down there, buddy. I'll get you some Taco Bell later. Just ease up. Don't bother. Because you don't bother. You just eat leftovers. That's lame. Yeah. Look, this is getting weird and confusing, so can I just go back to the episode so I can already have had time to play more Metroid? Yeah, I'm getting there. Future me sure is bossy. Where was I? Oh yeah. At the core of Super Metroid is the exercise of your will to power over yourself, your environment, and others. I mentioned earlier that Nietzsche's concept of a will to power sounds awesome if you're really young and have never thought about this stuff before. I mean, on the surface it sounds true. Don't we see governments, parents, bosses, and fellow humans flexing their power and imposing their will on others? Youthful cynicism really latches onto the idea that no one is really doing things because they like me or want me to be happy. It's just other people trying to exercise their power over me. I'm not really being a jerk to you, I'm just trying to use my own power. I'll readily admit that it can feel good to just boss people around sometimes. Hey, future me, put in a picture of a puppy right here. See? That was fun. But Nietzsche developed his idea as a critique of an earlier concept that he didn't feel explained everything. It's only fair to point out where Nietzsche's idea falls short. Will to power doesn't explain acts of selflessness. If Nietzsche wants to say that the will to power is all there is, he's going to have to ignore some of the greatest activities that humans do. Parents sacrificing time, energy, and desires for their kids, strangers risking their lives to save each other. Does Nietzsche really think all those Make-A-Wish volunteers are just trying to get power over the kids they help? Nietzsche wanted to explain all human behavior. He just left out half the things that make us human. Look, I'm not saying it isn't helpful or necessary to try to find out core motivations behind certain actions. Sometimes people are just trying to boss you around to stroke their own ego. And looking at history through a lens of who is recording it and where power is shifting is a very enlightening exercise. But there is a huge difference between looking for intent and assuming intent. Nietzsche's writings and ideas, his pessimistic attitude, are great at challenging ourselves and drilling down to what we believe. But take it from the man himself. He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if thou gaze long into an abyss, the abyss will also gaze into thee.
All right, here it is.
Oh! Yes!
Ah! 10 energy left. Look at that. Look at that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one thing Butts has stressed about his history with Ridley is that it's never a clean fight. It's always to the wire. And ladies and gentlemen, today was no exception.